Good morning, everyone. Apologies for our late start. We had a members briefing this morning, which delayed the setup in the room a little bit. And then after that, we had technical gremlins in the system, as we normally do with Zoom. So apologies for that. Okay. My name is Councillor Carl Lewis. I am the chairman, and I'll be chairing the Planning, Taxi, Licensing and Rights of Way Committee meeting here today. And the first item on the agenda is apologies. Over to you, Carol, for apologies and the roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Carl Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Gareth D. Jones. He is here, Chair, because Councillor Tom Colbert has given apologies. Councillor Angela Davis. Councillor Deb Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Hywyn Hume. She's online, Chair. Councillor Peter James.
Here.
Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Gareth E. Jones.
Present.
Councillor Karina Kenyon-Wade. Councillor Jeff Morgan.
Present.
Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Present.
Councillor Edwin Roderick. Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson.
Present.
And Councillor Hugh Williams. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gareth Jones, Vice Chair, can you make yourself known, please? And Councillor Hywyn Hume, please. Are they muted, Carol?
Yeah, I've just the enable stream. I've just sent them the enable stream, so they just need to click on enable stream on their laptops.
Okay. If you can both click on enable stream, it's on the bottom left-hand corner from memory. That'll give you access to unmute.
Chair, Councillor Gareth D. Jones is enabled to stream now.
Councillor Gareth Jones, Vice Chair. Could you make yourself known, please, that you're in the meeting? Councillor Hywyn Hume, Councillor Gareth Jones, Vice Chair. If you could put your cameras on, that would be another way of indicating that you're in the meeting.
I can see them both on my camera, on my screen.
Can you?
Chair? Yeah.
Chair, am I visible? Because I have no.
I can see Councillor Gareth Jones now, Vice Chair. I can see him waving. I can see Councillor Hywyn Hume as well. So they're both present in the meeting, Carol. Councillor Hugh, yes, I can see you. Excellent. Okay, everyone's present. That should be. On to the second item on the agenda, which is minutes from the previous meeting, the 21st of February. They're pages 5 and there's a blank page, page 6. Could I have a proposer and a seconder to? Thank you very much, Councillor Gareth Jones in the chamber. Councillor Adrian Jones, thank you very much. Seconder, thank you very much. On to item number 3, which is declarations of interest. A, to receive any declarations of interest from members relating to items to be considered on the agenda. Don't believe we have. To receive members' requests that a record be made of the membership of town and community councils where discussion has taken place of matters of the consideration of this committee. Don't think so. To receive declarations from members of the committee that they'll be acting as a local representative in respect to individual application being considered by the committee. I think we do. D, to note details on members of the county council who are not members of the committee who will be acting as a local representative in respect to an individual application being considered by the committee.
I would like to declare that I am speaking on the Application reference 23-12-38.
FUL. Thank you very much, councillor Les. Councillor Gary.
And same for me, I will be representing my community on item 4.2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, councillor Gary Mitchell. As we'll move on now to planning proper, item number 4.1. Has everyone had time to receive the updates that came from Carol and the paper updates that have come through to you in the chamber regarding Roger Parry's update? Has everyone had a chance to read them at home? Yes. If anyone hasn't had a chance to read them, please indicate now and I'll allow time for you to read them. If not, I'll proceed. Councillor Howland-Hume, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to note that this came to us at 8:54 this morning. The content of the report I have read once. I would like the opportunity to read it one more time. It does contain an awful lot of information which has a huge impact on the application 4.2. And it does contain a lot of information. And I personally feel I would like a second read of it. Had we been travelling to County Hall, we would have been in this position whereby we would not have been able to have read the update and digested it really, because there is a lot of content to it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howland. How long would you require, Councillor Howland, to read the report, your estimate?
About 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay, we'll adjourn for 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, does that report relate to 4.2? Because if it does, I haven't seen it, or is it?
No, it doesn't. Doesn't.
No.
Yes, that's a good plan. Yes. Apologies, everyone. Councillor Howland, are you still there?
Yes, Chair.
The only trouble is Councillor Howland won't be able to take part in the first application if we don't adjourn now, because she won't be able to give full concentration to the application, the first application, if she's reading the update report. Right, sorry, yeah, okay. Councillor Howland, we'll adjourn after the first application for you to read that for 10 minutes. Is that okay? Okay. First application on the list is 24/0062/FUL. This is an erection of operation of a temporary meteorological mast for a 36-month period. Land 3,800 meters west of Stay Little, Clanbryn Mire. Taking us through this application is Rhian Griffiths. Over to you, Rhian.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The first application before you today relates to the siting of a meteorological mast for a temporary period of 3 years. Following the update report circulated yesterday, we have received another 2 public representations overnight. One of these objects to the application and raises concerns already addressed within the reports. And the other one is in support of the application, raising cost effectiveness of onshore wind farm developments, which this mast is proposed to inform. So the mast is proposed to be located in the area circled red on this plan, which is approximately 2.5 kilometres southwest of Delyfy and 3.8 kilometres west of Stay Little. I'll now pass you back to the chair, who will introduce the first of our speakers.
Thank you very much, Rhian. First of our speakers, the local member, County Councillor Gary Mitchell. Over to you, County Councillor Gary Mitchell. You have 5 minutes and you may begin when you're ready.
Can I thank the planning officer, the chair and the committee for allowing me to speak on this matter and represent the views of many of the constituents I represent. With over 60 objections lodged against this application, it's clear to me that there are serious and legitimate concerns. The case officer report mentions that some of the objections may relate to the proposed wind farm rather than this mast. but that's not really surprising because the applicant's name is Esker Gallard Energy Park Limited. I've got some concerns relating to the application itself that I'd like to run through. Firstly, 4.4.2, in my opinion, is a false statement, where it says Stay Little is the closest community. Llwynagog is only 2.8 kilometres to the west, and Delivi, as the officer has just mentioned, only 2.5 kilometres to the north. Do these historic communities not count? Secondly, 2.1.4 states that it is not within a triple SI. That's correct, but it is less than 1 kilometre from the Plynlimmon triple SI, one of Wales's most important and largest triple SIs that we have in our country. And it's one that supports a great number of red list species and species within our own Nature Recovery Action Plan. I'm surprised and disappointed that our ecologist didn't mention this in her response, and I wonder why the applicant didn't provide the immense ecological details that it has amassed as part of its energy park proposal. 2.1.5 riles me personally when it says the local landscape character areas in the replacement LDP is of only limited material importance as the development plan is not currently adopted. Doesn't make the area any less special just because it hasn't been adopted. Local landscape character area 24, which this development sits in, states the area has outstanding cultural value. Again, the planning statement contradicts itself when 2.1.4 says the closest nationally designated landscape is Eryri. Then in 4.3.3, it says it sits within the Cambrian Mountains National Landscape Character Area. Those two contradict each other. I'm pleased to hear that the committee will be shown maps of how close this development is to the right-of-way network. It's an important feature for tourism in my area. And with 5 tourism businesses located within 3 kilometres, any impact on the right-of-way network is a concern. Planning policy concerns. Planning policy TD1 in our local development plan states only allow such developments in open countryside where compatible in terms of location, siting, design, scale, and well integrated into the landscape. So it will not detract from the overall character and appearance of the land. I'm concerned that the planning officer's report highlights that there is no policy on these structures in our current LDP, and the application makes it clear that it is for a standalone meteorological mast, not a wind farm. So should it not be treated as that, a standalone application, a development of significant size with a great number of objections raised? It's a development of 120 metres tall, spanning 160 metres on the ground, covering an area of 9,370 square metres. My understanding is that's just 600 metres below a significant development that would require pre-planning consultation. For a development site of 9,370 square metres, their green infrastructure statement is as weak as it could possibly be. I thought we were championing net gains in biodiversity in all planning applications. Why should this one be any different? Now, I'm no engineer, but I do think some of the documents are unclear and misleading. The anchors that are referred to being railway sleepers, I've never seen a railway sleeper that is 4 metres long and 1 metre wide. The base plate is very ambiguous. Is it steel? Is it concrete? It's 1.4 metres deep, 2.5 metres wide, and that's 3.5 cubic metres. That's made out of steel, Chair. That's 21 tonnes of steel. And they propose to drive this up there with a 4x4 towing a trailer? Not sure that's going to happen. Heritage. Let's think about the information provided in the documents you've got. 22 designated sites within 5 kilometres. 16 of these are scheduled ancient monuments. 11 of them are prehistoric. One of them is just 250 metres away. How can the report say that there will be no impact? In fact, it can't and it doesn't. It says the impacts are negligible. The application itself refers to Planning Policy Wales Edition 11. Planning system must protect, conserve, promote and enhance the historic environment as a resource for the general well-being of present and future generations. Caddo note the mast will have an adverse effect upon the closest monument and how it is experienced, understood and appreciated. And I ask you, committee, to reject or to delay determining this application whilst greater consideration is given to the ecological, historical and cultural impacts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gary Mitchell. Next of our speakers is Mr. Brimson. who is an objector. I believe, Mr. Brimson, you're part of a community action group.
Yes.
You can sit there if you want, yeah. Mr. Brimson, you have 5 minutes and you may begin when you're ready.
My thanks to the committee for allowing me to respond to this planning application. I'll be speaking to section 4.6 of the planning statement, which is headed Ecology and Ornithology. Unfortunately, this is very brief and short on detail, an extremely weak part of the statement. The EIA scoping report for the applicant admits that no consultation on ornithology had taken place at the date of publication, which is January of this year. It says a consultation with NRW had been requested but couldn't be accommodated. There's no mention at all of approaching the Montgomeryshire Wildlife Trust, which owns Glaslyn Nature Reserve. In fact, the scoping report is very coy about mentioning Glaslyn or MWT at all. According to the planning statement, the mast will have 54 guy lines anchoring it. And it says, quote, bird diverters would be fitted on outer guy wires only at 5-meter intervals to make the structure visible to birds and thus prevent collision. These bird diverters are a recognized collision mitigation method, but a publication by Nature Scott warns of their limitations, quote, especially for crepuscular or nocturnal species. The point being that diverters are hard to see by the birds when there's little or no light. For the area surrounding the proposed mast, crepuscular and nocturnal species include short-eared owl, barn owl, nightjar, woodcock, and snipe. Incidentally, I flushed a snipe from very near the proposed mast site when I walked there on Monday. The scoping report specifically says that nightjar hold breeding territories in the plantation in the central part of the Esgard Gallard site. The proposed location of the mast is only about 200 to 300 meters from the southern edge of that plantation. In addition to these species, the majority of the UK's migratory species migrate at night, which greatly increases the number of species at risk. The Nature Scott document goes on to say that species most susceptible to impacts with wires are waterfowl, waders, and birds of prey. 7 birds of prey are included in the scoping report, 3 of which are on the red list for Wales. With Llyn to the east and Glaslyn and Begailin to the west, the passage of waterfowl and waders through the area in between is to be expected. Osprey are also known to fly between Llyn and Begailin and Glaslyn. And incidentally, 2 pairs of osprey nested at Llyn last year, not 1, as the scoping report says. Curlew are still occasionally seen near Glaslyn, though they don't nest there in the way that they used to. One was recorded near Glaslyn about this time last year. Curlew are particularly vulnerable to collision because they cover large distances between feeding areas at night. Wales has lost 73% of its curlew since 1995, and it's predicted to become extinct as a Welsh breeding bird by 2033 if its decline continues. It's now top bird conservation priority in Wales, and Montgomeryshire is one of its few remaining refuges. I would argue that we should not be putting any more hazards in the way of what was once an iconic Welsh species. For all the above reasons, particularly because of the lack of detail that's included in the planning statement, I believe this application should be at least delayed, preferably refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brimson. That concludes our speakers on this application. I will pass back now to Rhian to take us to her recommendation. Back to you, Rhian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The map in front of you here shows the site marked with the red cross in relation to the public right-of-way, which is the black line. The right-of-way is located 180 metres from the outer guy wires to the southeast. Powys Rights-of-Way Department were consulted on the application and have not provided any comments. Nevertheless, given the distance, it is not considered that the development would have any negative impact upon the right-of-way. On this plan, in the bottom left-hand corner in the green hatch, you can just see the SSSI, which at its closest point is 1 kilometre away. So this plan shows a wider picture of that SSSI. As you can see, it varies in its distance from the site, depending on the direction in which you look at it. Powys Ecology have been consulted on the application and have not raised any objections to the development. Several objections to the development have raised concerns that the development is located in an area of peatland. The map shown currently is an extract from Data Map Wales, which shows the peatland in Burgundy. This is also at a scale of approximately 1 to 1 million, I think it was. So at its very closest, which is the 2 individual dots to the west of the site, it's approximately 270 metres away. The large area to the southwest and in the bottom left-hand corner of the map is approximately 1.4 kilometres away from the site. So this plan shows the anticipated access route to the site. Access will be made mostly using 4x4 vehicles, initially with trailers to deliver the components to the site, which is considered to be akin to agricultural movements in the area that already exist. The access utilises an existing farm track, which will not be subject to development. The area of the access is also outside of any of the identified areas of peatland shown on the previous slide. This plan here shows the elevation of the mast. So it will measure 120 metres in height, with the associated equipment on the top taking it to an overall height of 122.5 metres. The mast will be supported by 3 sets of guy wires, which will connect to the ground at 3 locations per set. These will be held in the ground by buried railway sleepers, and we have received confirmation from the agent that there will not be any pouring of concrete for the development. This plan shows a close-up aerial view of the development and shows where the anchor points for the guy wires will be in relation to the central mast. The outer anchor points will be 80 metres from the base of the mast. So the mast, by virtue of its sighting and height, will be visible from a wide area. So what's in front of you now is the view from the mountain road just west of Delyfi, taken from where the red arrow in the inset map is pointing from, looking directly south to the site. The mast would be roughly central in that picture on the skyline. This would then be looking directly west towards the mast, where again, the mast would be relatively central on that skyline as well. So this is taken from the access point to the site. The hill on the right-hand side of that photo that you can see is in front of where this application site will be. So it will be located behind that hill, but because of its height, it will, be visible above it. And then this is taken from the Cadaya viewpoint. The viewpoint looks towards the northwest, but the mast would be located behind that to the southeast. This photo looks towards the location of the mast, which would be located approximately 4.3 kilometres away and behind that hill. Given the height, it would possibly protrude above the skyline. Though over this distance, it's not considered that it's going to be prominent and wouldn't impact upon the viewpoint from that location. And that is it. I will pass back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Rhian. First of our speakers want to contribute to this debate is Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Thank you. Just a few questions. I think, yeah, it's obviously a substantial application in terms of height and things. Let me be clear. So there's no policy in the current LDP in relation to such applications.
Yeah, there's no specific policy on masts of this type. I would always say it's never going to be possible to include a policy on every type of development, but there are policies within the plan that would apply. So things like landscape policies and the development management policies, and that's the way that the plan was written. So, as I say, there isn't a specific policy, but there are policies that definitely are relevant.
Okay. Am I right in understanding also we did have TAN 8 by Welsh Government previously, I don't know what they're called these days, zones for potential developments of this kind. Am I right in understanding that this is outside of that zone?
Any of the zones are likely to be relating to larger renewable energy projects. This on its own isn't, and we have to consider it on its own merit. We're not considering the wind farm.
The zones that you're referring to, there were in TAN 8 no longer is applicable. Welsh Government replaced it. It was replaced when Future Wales, the All Wales Development Plan was prepared. TAN 8 used to include strategic search areas identified in number 3 in Powys. It was with Future Wales, it identifies what are called pre-assessed areas for wind energy. I haven't double checked this one. I don't think it is within that one of those areas, but those areas are identified for wind energy. This development's clearly not generating energy. It's my understanding it's there as an application to provide evidence that might support a future development of significance application.
Yeah, I fully understand that, but I think it's obviously intrinsically linked, I would argue. The other point is it's an open access area, I understand, and there's no response from the rights-of-way officers. That's disappointing, I would think, and that's an issue of concern perhaps. But also is, you know, the objectives have highlighted a number of environmental, especially in terms of birds and impact on birds, and especially at night of the wires and things, and question how these reflectors work and things. Are we totally satisfied that we have had all the relevant information from the developers and the applicants in relation to that? And while you're looking for that, the other point is the statement was said there was no concrete. Okay, there's no concrete in terms of the wires and things. How was the actual mast itself held in place? Surely they have concrete as a base or something there.
So with the first question on the bird deflectors, it is a condition on the consent that there are bird deflectors located on the outer by wires. That is at the request of the parapsychologist. So they have been consulted and they have, you know, commented that subject to that condition being put on, they do not have, you know, any objection in relation to ecology and birds at the site. Sorry, I was looking for that whilst you said your second question.
Oh, the statement about no concrete and things, but I'm intrigued how the, bearing in mind I know how windy stay little can be, you know, without a firm base, that won't stand up very long, I would suggest.
Yeah, they've said that the guy wires will be anchored in place using the railway sleepers, and that there will be no concrete.
How about the mast itself? What will base of that be? It won't stand up in itself.
will they be putting a floating raft in?
The reason I'm asking while you're looking at that is twofold, basically. Is obviously what will happen if there's concrete once the 3 years is end, will they clear that, restore the land, as they say. But also is the wider issue of in cabinet only a fortnight ago, there was a £10 million project supported to look at the River Severn catchment area as a whole in terms of floods and things. And I think one of the biggest issues for any developers in this area looking forward will be the potential effect of developments on water courses, etc. And the flow of water downhill, down to places like Llandinam, but further afield down to Shropshire and Kidderminster, etc., etc. So on the one hand, we seem to have a plan of action, investment by Welsh Government and UK Government to control and mitigate flooding effects. But there we could well end up with proposals which contribute to flooding effects. That's what I'm trying to get at.
So the mast base, the elevation confirms is going to be a steel with steel anchors and pins. Again, they have confirmed to us there will be no concrete, concrete at the site at all. So we can only go off that information. With flooding, the actual impact on the ground is only going to be in those anchor points and where the mast itself is going to be located. It's not going to be necessarily impacting, and there is then a condition on part included that would make sure that this mast is removed at the end of its temporary period and that the site is restored to its current condition.
Okay,
Is it conditioned that there is no concrete going into this structure?
No, there's no condition on that currently.
Okay. Councillor Highland-Hume, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I just want to acknowledge Councillor Gary and the other gentleman that spoke this morning, because initially both of them have identified the lack of detail and misleading information within this report. We often criticise agents for providing insufficient detail, but today we have it in front of us that contained within this report is, as has been quoted, misleading information and lack of detail. Going back to what is in front of us today, we have a temporary meteorological mast. This has to happen in order for this company to obtain accurate data, for them to collect the data, analyse it, and then for them to make an informed decision towards the feasibility of a project going forward. I note Highways comments, I note the ecologists' comments. I note also that CADU have also made reference that it is a temporary mast. I've noted the comments on the decommissioning and to return the site to its original condition. And then I have also noted on page 25 the third-party comments, the majority of which I feel are not relevant to this application in front of us today because it is a temporary meteorological mast, but I feel that the third-party comments contained within the report are more relevant if this goes to the next stage, which could or could not be the development of an energy park. So those are my observations, Chair, and I see there are other speakers, so I'll await to make any further comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Highland-Hume. Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to come back to the matter of the plinth relating to the mast. There were comments made by Councillor Gary Mitchell relating to the dimensions and the material that the plinth will be made of, and therefore its weight and mass. Is the planning officer able to provide me? It seemed a bit sketchy as to what is actually going on at the base of that mast. I'd just like some more information.
Hmm.
I think it is relevant because it's very relevant to how that material is transported to that site.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I can't zoom in on the elevational plan that was shown to you earlier on the screens, but so it's showing as having a base plate sort of just below the ground level, and then a 1.4 meter depth for the rods with a 2.5 meter width at the base plate level.
The material being
The plan does say that that will be made of steel.
however long steel.
Okay. There was talk about 4x4 vehicles going up to the site, and judging by the height of that mast, I would suggest that a large crane would be needed, because unfortunately, good friend Fred Dibner has passed away a long time ago. So I don't think anyone would want to climb up there. So I'd imagine that there'd be a crane in use in some format. And a crane of that nature, I would say, would be a lot larger than a 4x4 vehicle.
Transport movements were requested as part of the processing of the application. The information that we got back from them was that there would be 4x4s towing trailers and a transit van that was going to deliver the materials to the site, and that there would be no abnormal indivisible load movements. Whether Simon wants to come in at all.
Simon, would you like to add to the discussion, please?
Yeah, as Rian says, when we consulted, or when Rian consulted them and asked for the movement detail, what they've come back with is that there's going to be a single digger delivered at the start of the build, collected at the end. So presumably that will come in on a low loader. Otherwise, there are no other HGV movements. He said on day one, there's going to be 2 4x4s with trailers and a transit van. And then over the course of the next 10 days or the next 6 days, depending on the weather, there'll be 2 4x4 movements a day, so 1 in, 1 out. There is no mention whatsoever of there being any cranes coming to site. And I suppose it would be much the same as when they put up the telephone masts. They're, again, I don't know what height they are, but quite often there's no crane involved with that either. How exactly they do it, I genuinely do not know.
Okay. Before I go to Councillor Angela, if the committee was minded, Peter, could we, if they were minded to go along with the officer's recommendation, would it be something we could do? Would it be in our gift to condition that no concrete is used in the construction, because they've already suggested that no concrete will be used? Could we condition that? Would that be something the committee could do?
Yeah, just check with Rian. We always condition the plans relating to an application. So providing the plans are not showing concrete, we are by default saying there's no concrete there. So just checking with Rian.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would also suggest if we wanted to add a condition saying that, there shall be no concrete,
We could do.
we could do that.
Okay. I'll move on. Councillor Angela Davis, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just want to explore the idea of this being linked to the wind farm, because I think I read in the papers that they're accepting that this application, although temporary in its own structure, is there to provide evidence for the wind farm. But just mention now TAN 8, the zones for potential development. This area isn't in one.
Yeah. Just coming back again, TAN 8 doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, it
It's been
doesn't exist
removed by
anymore.
Welsh Government. So Future Wales it includes 2 policies relating to renewable energy. And it identifies for wind, it identifies what are called pre-assessed areas. Now that is very much for determining, anything at the moment that's over 10 megawatts, this has got no megawatts because it's not generating energy. But if we had an application that was generating wind energy of over 10 megawatts, it becomes what's called a development of national significance. ultimately, there's a proposal out there looking at a development of national significance in this area, but that application hasn't been submitted to PEDU or anything yet. It's in the early stages. We have to consider the proposal in front of us, which is a planning application and not a development of national significance. So pre-assessed areas are irrelevant to my mind. We've got to consider this on its own merits.
Okay.
One of the speakers used standalone, and that is right. We're going to consider, the committee needs to consider this as a standalone application in its own right. The impacts of this will be very different to what the impacts of a wind farm might be if that application comes forward in the future. So it's really making sure committee decide this one on its own merits. What have we considered the impacts fully? Are we satisfied that they have been? And if we think it's acceptable, as the officer is recommending, we'd recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clear up that there wasn't an option there for us to consider the next step in deciding this. Okay, so my concern is the number of objections, and I think the local population have the right, you know, to have that fully considered. So I'm just sort of going down the list. I've ticked off where I think we've answered the questions, but that impact on the birds, is there evidence? There must have been masts like this installed in other areas of the UK. Is there any evidence that these masts have an impact on the bird population? Or is there evidence to prove that there isn't?
Who wants to take that?
I'm personally not aware of what research has been undertaken in that regard. There are other masts of this around, you are correct with that. I think what it comes back to is that the ecologist has been consulted and that they haven't objected subject to those bird deflectors being placed on the outer guide wires.
Okay. And then somebody mentions the impact on the dark skies, but I understand this isn't a dark sky park or area, a designated area.
There's not even going to be much lighting on there. There's going to be an aviation light at the top because of the low flying aircraft, but that is going to be it.
And the other one I had no knowledge is noise. So what sort of noise? Presumably the wind going through the wires. Do we know anything about what the likelihood of noise is?
I suppose there could be some noise during the physical construction of the mast, and yeah, whether there would be noise whistling, I don't know. But there's no residential properties.
I think they say in relation to the rights of way, so spoiling that right to quiet enjoyment of the countryside. Is it likely to be noisy, you know, from other masts?
I wouldn't have thought so, Councillor Angela, because I think that rights away would have made a comment. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm just
you
want
can.
to feel that we've
Yeah,
considered
absolutely,
everything,
absolutely.
and you've explained why Powys County Council instead of PEDU are determining the. Okay, no, I think you've answered all the other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peter James, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is really the delivery of the mast components for the installation. Do we know what the size of the largest components are, and to know that they are transported on a 4x4 vehicle? Just is there any clarification on the size of the components or the biggest part of the components? And is the base bolted together like a Meccano set? And again, is that size component as well?
We haven't received any confirmation of each size part of it, but the movements, you know, are, as Simon said earlier, there are on the elevational drawings confirmation of segments which are 6 meters each, but as to how many segments are delivered or whatever on one, I don't know.
And just to clarify, is the base components or one component?
We don't have confirmation of that, but it is annotated separately on the plans as a base plate and then the steel anchor and pins.
I'm just thinking of the size and the weight as been discussed, and whether that would make a difference if they came in component and then bolted together. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Peter James. Councillor Gareth E. Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I go back to the point that Councillor Angel made about the bird deflectors? In your report, you said they only asking for bird deflectors and outside wires. Do you know why? And they're 18, and the base of those are 80 meters away from the mast. To me, that gives an awful lot of space between that wire and the mast. And why aren't the ecologists asking for more bird deflectors and more of the wires?
The bird deflectors are installed at, I believe, 5-meter intervals along those outer wires. So the higher up you go, obviously the closer to that central mast point it would be. As to why, I don't know, and that's what we rely on the ecologist's comments for, and that's what they've suggested.
Okay, it just doesn't seem to be applying enough bird deflectors in my mind. But obviously, I'm not an expert in that area.
Okay. Councillor Hugh Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. And believe it or not, I know this area quite well, having stayed in Stay Little Outdoor Pursuit Centre on numerous occasions and walked up here. And I know Beguiling and Glaslyn, and I think it's just a shame because it will have a visual impact. It may be temporary, but my concern is, having heard all the other responses as well, if we approve this, it almost gives weight to the other development that's waiting in the background. And I'm finding it difficult to separate the two of them. But my question, I suppose, how many guy ropes are there? Because if it's an 80 point to an anchor, that means there's a diameter of 160. In my view, that's a substantial sort of temporary build. Can somebody clarify that, please? Yes, thank you.
There's 19 guy wires per set, and then there's 3 sets. So if my maths is correct, is that 57?
Yes.
Yep.
But that's a 160 meter radius or diameter.
So the furthest anchor point away from the centre of the mast is 80 meters away, and on the plan you can see the different anchor points then come in central to the.
So that is a substantial area. That is 160 meter diameter. It's just an observation. I'm not comfortable with it. I have to be honest with you, I'm not comfortable with it. I think it is an area of outstanding national benefit and what have you. I'm not sure what. It's not official, but it is a really interesting historic landscape with Penacrockbren not far away. There's a burial sites around there. I just think it's just a shame, really, because it's a precursor for something else. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, we'll bring Peter in again.
Yeah, we have to consider the application that's in front of us. We can't. We have got no evidence, no information about any other type of application here. So it has to be a decision on this application. Whatever happens in the future, happens in the future. And this committee will potentially have a role in that as well at that point. But we've got to determine the application as is before us.
Okay. Can I ask a question, Rhian? How many objectors did we receive altogether?
So there's 85 objections and 1 letter of support, I believe.
Okay, out of that 85, are there any that are living within sight of that mast, or are they people that are passing through the right of way?
I don't have that information to hand, but I, from memory of some of the addresses, they are local.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Councillor Adrian Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quite simple question, really. If we were minded to refuse this application, it would go to some other higher body, would it, to be discussed?
I'll bring Peter in.
Thank you.
if the committee wants to choose to go against officer recommendation, they need to provide a reason why. So you have to articulate those reasons first. Like every other application, applications have to be determined in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So yeah, you'd have to explain. If the committee did choose to refuse, you've got to come up with those reasons, and I will guide you as to the strength of those reasons if you went down that route. If we refuse it, there is a right of appeal to Planning Environment Decisions Wales. The other option available would be for the applicant to look at the refusal reasons and see whether they could address those refusal reasons and then resubmit the application. Okay, so those are really the two main options.
Okay, and our reasons to refuse would have to be extremely strong, otherwise we'd be, yeah. Okay, Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, please.
Sorry, just quickly, you said in the beginning, obviously, the visual impact is one of the key considerations. In view of its location, especially some of the pictures the officer showed initially from the deliver end, has Snowdonia National Park been consulted on this? Because it will have be visually from Snowdonia National Park.
No, Snowdonia National Park haven't been consulted.
Okay, should they? Because it will have, I'm just saying this because I'm aware of other such developments that have happened in north of Llanfairmyr in the past, and Snowdonia National Park have actually intervened about the visual impact because of the height of that, and it is a key consideration with them.
Just trying to work out how far away the park is, yeah.
Well, it's quite Machynlleth, basically. So if you're at top of, the picture you showed, there was a car by there. If I remember rightly, that's what we call the Crawier as you're heading down towards Aberosan. You notice it will be visible from that direction, Sydden Mount at least. Well, if you're on Cadair Idris, which isn't all that far behind Pennell, Aberdyfi, all that is in the national park. And I'm aware that and the same issue happens up towards Nant Conwy in the Conwy area with the national park also.
So at its closest, which as you say is Machynlleth, and this is going on the road network, so it's not as the crow flies, but it's so as the crow flies, it's 14.7 kilometers. So that's why they haven't been consulted over that distance. It's not considered that this mast would have that significant impact that would warrant that consultation.
Councillor Jeff Morgan, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to say there's been a lot of talk about the visual impact, but this mast it can't be put in a valley bottom, can it? To collect the data that's needed, it's got to be where it's got to be. And that's the unfortunate thing. But to get the data that's needed, it's got to be on the top of that hill. That's the point. That's the point I'd like to make.
Indeed. Okay, members. Councillor Gareth J. Jones, Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened intently to everything that's all been said, and believe me, I've been trying to find a valid reason why we can either defer this or refuse it. But the only one I could possibly think of is the visual impact. But on page 22, that does, I think that covers that pretty well from the officer. The question I'd like to ask is relating to decommissioning, and that's it notes it'll only be up for 3 years, and that one of the conditions will be that they will be required to return the land as normal. Now, historically, we've heard of so many companies that are no longer with us having put up this, and then the question is asked, who is responsible for the financial cost of dismantling? So the question I'd like to ask of the officer and of Peters, can we request a sum of money, I'm not quite sure the technical term, that could be set aside for this to be done, so that if we were to accept officer recommendation and go with the application, then they could be guaranteed that there would be money available to return this to the current state of the land.
I think you're referring, Vice Chair, to a bond. Is that what you're?
Correct, bond. That's the one. Thank you, Chair. Always got the words there you have.
Yeah, I'm not aware that we've done, we've had other masts elsewhere in Powys. We've never insisted on a bond, so I think we'd be setting new ground here. I think just I don't know, Rachel, if you've got anything extra you can add there.
I wouldn't have thought so. I don't know on what grounds we can insist on that. in
Yeah.
terms of-
Yeah, it's.
The ground simply would be because there's 85 objections to it. There's 85 people concerned about the visual impact and what it's going to do to the area. And the reason would be because we want to guarantee that if this was there, then it would be returned to its current state. That's the reason.
Yeah, but
Ultimately, if we were in a position in 3 years after the mast had been installed where the mast hadn't been dismantled, that would be an enforcement process at that time.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in your hands, members. I have no direction at the moment on this application one way or another. Councillor Hywyn-Hume, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the basis that this is a temporary meteorological mast for up to 3 years, I am happy that we have addressed the concerns raised, and I'm happy to go with officer recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hywyn-Hume. Councillor Jeff Morgan, please.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hywyn-Hume, just going back to your proposal, are you happy enough for your proposal to include the condition that no concrete is used? Is that something you'd be happy to include?
Very much so. Thank you.
Okay, if we can make a note of that, please. As there are no other members wishing to contribute to the debate, and we have a proposer and seconder to go along with the officer's recommendation, Councillor Angela Davis, please.
Sorry, Chair, I couldn't find my hand up.
Okay.
I just want to explore that visual aspect more thoroughly. Is that not a reason to object? There's so many objections based on the visual aspect. We've been told it will be seen from here, there, and everywhere. So is that not a sound reason to be able to object?
Peter, do you want to answer that?
Well, it is a reason. It's the impact on the landscape, I think, that you're referring to. So it's probably you need to explain why you consider there's an adverse impact there, and bearing in mind that it's a temporary use as well. That impact is only there for 3 years, and then it will be removed. Yeah.
Just further that as well, it's a very slim structure, although it is tall. The structure itself is very slim. The guy wire ropes are only 4 millimeters each, and it's going to be grey against the skyline, so it's not going to be, you know, a glaringly obvious colour that's going to stand out or anything. It will. It has been designed to minimise that as far as possible.
Okay.
But I know we say 3 years, but I can take you to masts that have been here there much longer. Every time they say 3 years, but they're there much longer than that. It's like a rolling program, you know. But once you've approved it once, it's not going to get refused the second time, the third time, whatever.
I presume that because there's a 3-year period, after that 3-year period, if they wanted it to remain, they would have to come back with another application. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. They'd have to come back with another application then, which they could either then apply for an extension for another temporary period, or, you know, they could apply for it permanently if they so wished, but that would be considered then at that time under that application.
Okay. Before I proceed, we've got another 2 speakers. Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Elwyn must have had an invisible hand there. I didn't. But anyway, Councillor Elwyn made almost exactly the same point as I was going to make, and that was cannot an extension be applied for? But it sounds like it can.
Yeah, if they wanted to apply to extend it, they would have to, submit an application for that, and then it would be,
Which,
back for consideration at that point in line with whatever policies were adopted at that time.
gotcha, yeah, which would then perpetuate that visual impact.
If they wanted to extend the time period, obviously the mast itself would remain the same visually, but yes, the length of time that it was visible for would be lengthened.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Adrian Jones, please.
Yes, I just wanted to ask about the visual aspect of it again. Surely there's, well, I think there are aircraft warning lights on it.
Yeah, there is a request from the Ministry of Defence for aviation lights at the top because of low-flying aircraft in the area.
That's quite an impact, right? Isn't it?
The condition that we've put on at the moment requests further information of that. We would be expecting or looking towards infrared lights to minimise that, light disturbance to the wider area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll pause momentarily just in case someone else wants to raise their hand. That's a legacy hand, I take it, Councillor Adrian. Okay. Councillor Gareth Pugh, please.
Thank you, Chair. You've mentioned that you're a bit concerned about, say, a load of concrete at the base of this. You seem to be getting quite hung up over, say, a load of concrete, which is fair enough, but that just scares me because if this comes out with the right data that these people are wanting, you're not going to be talking about a load of concrete in the future. And I know we must look at this on its own, but what I'm saying is what we're looking at today is very insignificant to what might be around the corner, but I appreciate we are looking at this today. Personally, I'd like to object against this on the grounds of visual impact and the danger to wildlife. That's where I'm at with this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Chair, I'll second that.
You'll second that, okay. I will go to Peter for clarification on the wording here.
Impossible. Yeah, big sigh, sorry. Obviously, if committee is minded that there is visual impact or landscape impact, I think you've got to bring it back to that. But I've got to advise you whether I think it's a strong reason or not. I don't think that's a particularly strong reason for the reasons that we've just explained, that it's there for a temporary period. It has to be removed at the end of that period. I also think, as Rian explained, the actual structure of it, when you see other similar masts, and we do have them in the county, you almost see through them. So that level of visual impact isn't as great as it would be for something that's permanent and that you couldn't so easily see through. So I don't think, in my mind, it's a strong view. I think the ecology and the impact on birds, we certainly heard from one of the speakers at the back, may have come across birds walking and so on. What we haven't had, and I know when our ecologist looks at applications, they look at the data that the Powys Biodiversity Information Service hold. Now, if that data hasn't been reported, we don't have that data to assess. And that's the same for a developer. So when we haven't got the evidence there, even though I'm not saying that the birds aren't there, they may well be there, it just hasn't been reported. So we don't hold the evidence to assess applications fully. So there may be anecdotal evidence there, but that probably needs to be reported through the formal mechanisms. I don't think we had any objections either from NRW on this one, just looking at Rian. They're not consulted on that one, but I think that's my position. We haven't got the ecologist having reviewed the evidence behind this that would have objected. So again, that reason isn't a solid reason to my mind. All I can do is give you my advice.
Would it be useful, just thinking out loud now, if we deferred this application to gain that information that members obviously here today are seeking? That would be an option. I'm just putting it out there. because the arguments coming forward from my point of view to refuse this application are not very strong. Councillor Elwyn.
Chair, I think it's a shame we haven't got that evidence, isn't it? One way or the other, because I think at the end of the day, we can base decisions on evidence.
Yes.
And it would be useful, I would have thought, for us as a committee, but also for the developers to know exactly, and I can't see how any future potential development can happen without such baseline evidence being in existence in the first place. So I think that is needed, and that perhaps that would enable the correct decisions to be made at a future date. And if that means we have to defer it to enable that to happen, well, so be it.
Okay, I will pop back to Councillor Gareth Pugh. Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm right behind Elwyn on that. See a lot of other applications that we get for various other things. If enough information doesn't come forward, will we quite rightly refuse them? Isn't this something that the developer, if we ask, should provide us with this information? Just because the information isn't there doesn't mean to say that it's not going to be detrimental to the wildlife and the birds and all the ecology and a lot of the objections that we've heard of the local knowledge from around that area, which know a lot more than I do sat here. I would certainly at least want a deferral until that information is brought to us, because I can't see how we can make a decision without that information. And just because it isn't there is not an excuse to barge this one through today.
So you're happy, Councillor Gareth Pugh, to withdraw your proposal of one of objection to one and...
Well, no, I still object to it based on the lack of information that we've got in front of us. I'm not going to barge it through just because the information isn't there. It doesn't give them a right to run straight over us, does it?
No, but what I was going to ask, are you happy to remove your proposal of objection and propose that we defer?
What would we normally do in an instant like this if enough information doesn't come forward? Would we object? Or are we going to be lenient and defer?
I'm in your hands, Councillor Pugh.
Okay, then treated like a lot of other applications that come through. If the information isn't there at the date of going to committee, well, I'll stick with objecting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. As there are no other proposals coming forward, I'll take the objection first. Members, it has been proposed and duly seconded to go along with against officer's recommendation on the grounds of visual impact. Those members wishing to go against officer's recommendation, please indicate in impact, visual impact and wildlife, sorry. And insufficient information on those two. Councillor Gareth Pugh, is that a legacy hand?
Sorry, Chair, it is a legacy hand.
Yes, we are, and there it is. It's in the chat box. Just wait, members, for Carol to collate the votes. And then we'll have adjournment for 10 minutes to allow members to read the update report that came from Roger Parry in the next application. We'll have a comfort break then for members in the chamber.
So Chair, 15 members in the meeting. 9 have voted with the recommendation to refuse, 5 against that recommendation and 1 abstention.
So that's a refusal on the grounds pointed out. So there we go.
Can I just need to clarify in
Yeah.
terms of those reasons that
Yeah.
making sure there's no disagreement here. It's around insufficient evidence
On wildlife and visual impact.
and landscape and visual impact.
Yeah, we'll leave the word into
myself,
to
yeah.
yourself and in consultation with me and the vice chair.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we'll break for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Chair, it's Councillor Hugh. Bearing that in mind that we are having a 10-minute break and I have to leave at 12, I don't think I can do justice to the next application.
Okay.
And it is council business. I'm not wandering out to shop or anything like that. So I have to excuse myself now. So I do apologise for that.
Thank you very much for your contributions today, Councillor Hugh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your breaks and we managed to read through the update report that was sent in by Roger Parry's. We'll now go to the roll call. So over to you, Carol, for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Carl Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Gareth D. Jones. Councillor Angela Davis. Councillor Deb Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Harwin Hume.
Present.
Councillor Peter James.
Present.
Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Gareth E. Jones.
Present.
Councillor Karina Kenyon Wade. Councillor Jeff Morgan.
Present.
Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Present.
Councillor Edwin Roderick. Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson. And Councillor Hugh Williams has left on other council business. Thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you, Carol. On to our next application, which is 23/1238 FUL, erection of rural enterprise dwelling, detached garage, change of use of agricultural building, mixed use agricultural and commercial associated with Henry Vach Carno. Taking us through this application is Rian Griffiths. Once again, over to you, Rian, please.
Thank you, Chair. So as the Chair has just mentioned, this application relates to the retrospective change of use of a building to form a mixed use associated with the applicant's forestry business. It also relates to the proposed erection of a rural enterprise dwelling. This is the 4th application for the dwelling, with 2 of the previous 3 applications being refused. So this is an aerial image of the site, with the site outlined in red. As you can see, it's just north of Carno, along the A489. I will now pass back to the Chair, who will introduce the first of our speakers.
Thank you, Rian. First of our speakers is Councillor Les George, County Councillor Les George, the local member, please. Councillor Les George. Councillor Les, you're familiar with what happens, so you have 5 minutes and you may begin when you're ready. You need to press your mic, Councillor. Thank you.
Bore da pawb. Good morning all. Chair, committee members, the application in front of you this morning for your consideration is for Mr. Edward and Mrs. Kerry Jarman Jones of Carno. They are both Welsh-speaking members of local farming families and were born, brought up, and educated in their communities. At the present time, Edward and Kerry are having to live in small, 2 up, 2 down rented accommodation. They now have to very small children of their own and are desperate to build a home for their family. This entrepreneurial young couple have established and are now operating a successful family business on the outskirts of their village, employing local labor and in turn supporting many other local ancillary businesses. Edward and Kerry are a hard-working, enthusiastic and industrious team, needing the opportunity to build their family home in the immediate vicinity of their business on the land that they own. If they are given the opportunity today, it will support this family for the future. It will very much enhance many aspects of their community. And it will certainly give them the chance to generate, increase, and expand their business. Within the progression of rural life, families work together. They create communities. They help each other out in times of need and form a security for all ages of their families. Powys is a very rural county, and it is essential that we help and support young Welsh-speaking people to stay and embrace their communities. With the Welsh Government's incentive and an aspiration for well over 1 million people speaking Welsh by 2050, let's really help our Welsh communities. Committee, please vote in favour of this application. Unfortunately, the member for Carno Community Council is not able to attend, and I would like to relay their statement to the committee. Carno Community Council are fully supportive of Edward and Kerry's application, as the need for more houses and rented accommodation are desperately needed for our community, especially for our young people who want to live in their home area. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
Thank you very much, County Councillor Les George. Next of our speakers is Gerald Davis, the agent, and Mr. Edward Jarman Jones. I believe you both are sharing the 5 minutes allotted time, so you may split your time as you see fit.
Diolch Cadeirydd, bore da cynholwyr. My name is Edward Jones and I'm here today with my wife and 2 children, who you can see in the back. I leave the planning to Gerald, but I came here today to make sure the committee have full understanding of my business and why it's essential to remain sustainable to have a dwelling on site. I started the business in 2017 when I was fortunate to attain land and building from Kerry's dad, Rob Jarman. The business is fundamentally a forestry business, which is defined as agriculture and have contracts with NRW, Till Hill, Coed Cymru and other organisations. Our main work for these organisations is to prepare ground for roads, plantations for the next generation of trees, which, as the committee knows, might extend to all farmers in Wales if the 10% of woodland planting comes into new sustainable farming scheme. The work not only involves this day-to-day activities, but we are responsible for any emergency works, which include highway works, pollution works, fire and water damage, which requires being on call 24/7 if anything happened on adjoining and any of the organisation's land. Since 2017, we have grown as a business and now employ 2 full-time staff and some part-time staff. Unfortunately, since 2020 and 21, the business is at a standstill and cannot grow despite the potential of new contracts. The reason is being lack of house on site. The lack of on-site security makes it difficult for us to gain the necessary insurances for the machinery without a massive premium. There has been occasions where some organisations have been disappointed with our promptness with emergencies due to the fact is I'm not on site and been able to act quick enough. Being on site will allow me to work within walking distance at home at night and make sure everything is prepared of a drop of a hat for the 24/7 emergency. If we have a house on site, we would be able to employ more people, grow the business with a certainty of the future. Without a house on site, I am concerned how the business can continue, as we will lose contracts to other companies outside Powys and will have to look elsewhere outside the county to set up our business. I know it's not planning policy, but both my and Kerry's family have been in the area for generations, and this proposed house is not just for Kerry and I, but for our future generations sitting there. The only way keeping young couples like Kerry and I in the area is to support businesses that employ local people and provide the housing they require. Thank you very much. I'll leave Gareth now to talk to you about planning policies.
Thank you, Ed. As you've just heard, this is a vitally important application for Ed's business, but connected to his business is his young Welsh-speaking family which rely on his business. The recommendation from the officer is one of refusal based on insufficient information. The fact it's based on insufficient information means it's a balanced case where interpretation of the need for a house on site is subjective. TAN 6 is clear that it allows housing in the open countryside for rural enterprises, which the officers agree that this business falls under, but they are unsure of the need for a house to be on site. The 5 points raised as concerns have been covered, as you've seen in the update this morning. We fully understand that planning policies are there to stop the proliferation of housing in the countryside, and they should only be given for proven cases. The need for a house for this business is subjective, and TAN 6 allows that subjectivity to enable councils to interpret the need for this house in their way. As you will see in this committee report, the officer has decided that they don't believe there is sufficient justification for this house on this site. However, that does not stop you as a committee to decide that you feel there is sufficient justification for this house on site.
1 minute, Mayor.
Hopefully, the committee has read the committee update we provided. If you haven't, please do so before voting on this application, as this sets out the need for this house in more detail than the officer's report and provides an opportunity for the committee to make the judgment themselves. Is there sufficient information in this case for you to decide there is a need for a house for this business, Ed, Kerry and their family? That is the only question the committee needs to ask of themselves today. Based on what you have heard from the speakers and the committee update provided, do you as councillors believe there is a need for a house for the applicants and the business? Thank you.
Thank you both, Mr. Gerald Davis and Mr. Edward Jarman-Jones. Thank you very much. That concludes our speakers on this application. I'll hand back now to Rhian Griffiths to take us to her recommendation. Over to you, Rhian.
Thank you, Chair. So again, we've got an aerial view here just showing the site in more detail. The agricultural building can be seen within that red circle, and that bottom corner of the field is also where the house is proposed as part of this. So this is the location plan, which shows it in a bit more detail. So you've got the agricultural building to the left-hand side of the proposed dwelling location, with the rights of way on this plan shown in dashed green. Here's a the block plan submitted in support of the application, which shows the layout of the site with the driveway to the dwelling with detached double garage and associated garden curtilage to the right hand side of that building. So within the report, you will have noted that the application site is partially located within the flood zones of the flood maps for planning. This shows those layers on the plan. So where the red cross is where the agricultural building is. So the that building subject to the change of use is within the flood extents, but the location of the dwelling, which is at the bottom end of this corner field, is outside of those flood extents. And this is a plan showing the right of way, which was previously marked with a dashed green line. So you can see it comes along the access track before splitting off towards the site. These are the elevational drawings that have been submitted for the dwelling. And those are the floor plans associated with that as well. So the internal floor area of this dwelling as proposed is 150 square meters with 4 bedrooms. Alongside the dwelling is a proposed detached double garage, which is on the screens now. So that has an internal floor area of 32 square meters. And we've got some photos of the site. So this is sort of northeast of the site, looking back down towards it. We can see the building there subject to the change of use. And then this corner of the field that we can see is the corner where the dwelling is proposed. That is then looking at that corner a bit better. So we can see the trees behind it, which line the waterway that runs down that side of the field. And then that is to the right hand, further to the right, looking up the field. And then that photo there is where the parking for the business is proposed, with the building then on the right hand side. This is the access to the site. So there are some access improvements proposed, which highways are supportive of and have recommended conditions for any approval if that was the way to go. So this is a flow diagram, which I'm hoping you can all see on your laptops. This is taken from the TAN 6 practice guidance for rural enterprise dwellings. As you will all be aware, rural enterprise dwelling applications are subject to assessment against the tests contained within TAN 6. The first of these tests, and the first factor in the flow diagram, is to assess whether there is a functional need for a rural enterprise dwelling on the site. This need must relate to unexpected situations that might arise outside of normal working hours, that if not addressed quickly would threaten the viability of the enterprise. TAN 6 also makes clear that these situations only qualify if they could not be overcome using other practical means. In the case of this enterprise, the applicant runs a forestry business where they primarily undertake work relating to forestry roading and ground preparation, alongside some other things which they have mentioned to you this afternoon. To facilitate this, workers visit the application site in the morning to collect their machinery or equipment that they will need for the day before travelling on to their place of work. Whilst it is appreciated that the site does form the central base of the business for storage purposes, it is also noted that the work undertaken by the business is not located on this site. Whilst the submitted information does make reference to an appendix which includes examples of the specific emergencies which may occur which require a dwelling on site, no such appendix has actually been submitted for consideration. As such, unfortunately, we have not been able to review any such circumstances. The examples that have been provided elsewhere in the appraisal make reference to the possibility of theft, greeting of unexpected visitors, and receiving of deliveries. However, none of these are considered to meet the qualifying criteria of emergencies that could not be overcome by other practical means. Whilst it is acknowledged that a new document has been submitted and circulated to you all this morning, the information contained within it does not add any new information that would overcome concerns previously raised within the reports. Pass back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Rhian. Over to members now for discussion. First to indicate they'd like to speak on this application is Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Thank you for the report. Except it's always a challenge with such applications of this nature. However, many of the elements are also always subjective. Can I thank, first of all, for the added information this morning, because I do feel it gives more meat on the bones and able to focus on facts. I think in a time when our rural communities are changing so much, when we're seeing, as we've seen in recent weeks, the change in agricultural policy and actually depopulation from our valleys, we have to think what our rural communities are and how they will look in future. And to me, it's crystal clear that we need to facilitate and help new enterprises, land-based enterprises, green enterprises of that nature to grow and develop wherever possible, and even builders. And in order for that to happen, I think we need a can-do attitude, not a can't do. And I fear sometimes that planning policy, not just at Powys level, but at Wales level, has a can't do approach. In terms of functional need, I think the concept that somebody with heavy machinery and valuable machinery and equipment of this nature is very expensive, has to live in a village or something, is a very odd one to me. On that basis, most of the farm buildings and houses that we have in our valleys would never be allowed to develop these days. And I think to me, it's obvious that such a family, such a business owner, should be able to live on the site of that actual business, especially when they, you're talking about equipment worth tens of thousands at a time. So to me, the functional test of actually having the need is crystal clear. And in terms of the extra information, which is very useful this morning, in terms of labour, it shows to me that it is clear also in terms of the need. And then it goes on to the terms of time test, which equally to me fits into the expectations of TAN 6. And it's very useful in terms of the financial test, because obviously we need to see if it's viable for such a development to happen. And the figures there clearly indicate to us that they are, and enabled us to see factually the situation. And finally, the other dwelling test and the size and scale, which I think in terms of the other dwelling test, that's proven. And the size and scale, well, there's two issues to me there. It seems to me that Powys have already approved properties which over 150 square meters previously. So why do you allow some, but not this one? And what I think is important also is the message here that there is a potential compromise conversation to be had if that was the need in future. All in all, what gets me in this authority is we come here all the time to social services and things, and they tell us about how much they're overexpending. Older population, we've got over 65 higher in Powys than any other county in Wales, amongst the highest in the UK in future years. We have Welsh government, and something I'm particularly keen on, wanting more Welsh speakers. Yet I know there's about 6,000 Welsh speakers lost every year from between Powys and Ceredigion. and depopulation. Here we have a classic situation where we have a young Welsh-speaking family want to grow and develop their enterprise in their own community, and yet we're saying no. And I think there's a disjointed approach there in totality, and that is why I have no ounce of doubt, and I will be proposing that we approve the application before us today. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. So that's a proposal to go against officer's recommendation and approve the application. Okay. Councillor Adrian Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just have clarification? On the planning application, it says for a dwelling and change of use of buildings, so we're lumping them together. In my mind, if we don't pass this, does that mean that that business falls because he hasn't got the plan permission for change of use?
So that business is already there. They haven't received that planning permission for the change of use, but they did apply separately previously. Was it later last year, I believe? We did receive two separate applications, one for the dwelling, one for the building. The dwelling application was refused and the change of use was withdrawn by the applicants. It has been their choice then to put them together as part of this application.
I sort of understand, but you'd think that you'd have to have a business set up, planned for with plan application before you could apply for a house. So that's just my point. So if that's what we're deciding on, I'll take it, but it seems the wrong way around to me. I'm just pointing it out. Also, could I have a clarification on who actually owns the buildings? It says here it's been used with the permission of the applicant's father. So will the building, all the building and the land, the house we built on, be owned by the applicant, or is it in a partnership? Can we have that clarified, please?
The two businesses are run separately. So the applicant's parents, I understand, run the farm at Henryvar.
Yeah.
This is a separate enterprise. The building and the land currently are within the applicant's parents' ownership. They have indicated that there could be some transfer then of ownership, but that hasn't been submitted as part of this application.
Sorry, do you want to repeat that again?
Yes.
Just the last
Chair,
part.
Chair, before you go on, you know, it's almost intolerable. I mean, could we ask that that drilling subsides until the end of this planning committee, because it's making it really difficult?
Good idea.
Sorry, Chair.
No, good suggestion.
Business agricultural.
Hey. They could walk out and strike now, couldn't they?
You do one of them. Thank you, Carol. Okay, could you repeat the last part of what you said there, Ian, please?
Yeah, I don't know quite how much you weren't able to hear, sorry. So the ownership at the moment is within the applicant's parents. There is an indication that some transfer of ownership may occur, but there's no, legal agreements for that or proper confirmation of that has been submitted as part of this application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howland Hume, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just bear with me 1 second. There we are. Right, okay. I think my first comment here, when I see something or an application of this nature come before us, is Powys Planning Services open for business? That's my first comment. We have seen many of these applications come before us in the past, and many of us have struggled as to the determination of them. However, this is a young family who want to stay local in the Carno area. They have their family around them, so they have their support mechanisms in place to support them as a couple and also their children. Secondly, many agricultural buildings are used as mixed use. I do not see that as unusual, but what this applicant is doing today is having the formal change of use applied for, because many agricultural businesses operate a subsidiary business from within the farmstead already, and we don't always get to see a change of use for those sort of applications. I do want to touch on the report that's come in this morning. When did we receive that report, please, officer?
I don't know the precise date. It was received this week and prior to the update report that was then circulated to members.
Because, as I said at the outset, this report contains an awful lot of information that was supposedly missing when the original planning report came to us as members of this committee. But I'm very happy that the tests that are required, there is a huge amount of detail contained within the report we've had this morning. Can I just ask, I know there is a passing bay required. Is that in the ownership of the applicant, please?
As I understand it, the applicants don't own any of the land. It's all within the ownership of the parents.
Okay, that's fine. And again, I am of the view that with all the additional information that we have received before us today from the agent, I'm happy to go along with my fellow member, Councillor Elwin, and propose that we approve this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howard-Hume. Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think what I'm about to say sort of pretty much concurs with some of the previous speakers. I mean, to me, this application encapsulates what we're trying to achieve as a local authority. The encouragement of rural business and bolstering of the Powys economy, the ability to retain young people within Powys, and also younger people coming into our local schools. As I've already said by Councillor Vaughan, the promotion of the Welsh language and the continuation of that. So it ticks so many boxes for me, and I think what potentially allows us to do is be seen as an enabling authority rather than one that's actually preventing all of those things happening. I completely understand the constraints set within Town 6. I have some knowledge of that. And what I'd like to get a little, well, sorry, and the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the reversing of the aging demographic that we've got in Powys. You know, it's also countering that, and it's something, all of those things are part of the reason I'm a county councillor, to be perfectly honest. So you can understand why I feel very strongly about this particular application. What I want to get my head around really and get a better understanding of is the constraints set in Town 6, what it stops us doing. The agent spoke about us allowing to make our own sort of not nuance exactly, but to sort of look at it in a sort of subjective way and look at ways in which we can enable applications like this. And I want to know what it is within this application that stops us doing that. And I understand, by the way, that by approving this, it potentially sets a precedent. But in a way, I feel if it set a precedent, that's a good precedent. So that's what I want to dig into a bit more.
Okay. Peter, if you want to come in first.
Okay, I've sat listening. There's a lot of comments there. I think Councillor Hywyn-Hume said, are we open for business? The council is certainly, and the authority is certainly open for business. So just make that one clear. We do permit applications. We might refuse one just now. So we are open though for business. I think as a committee, I've got to remind you, we've got to make decisions in line with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So what I haven't heard is from members so far is how we've determined in line with the development plan, which refers us to Town 6 and the use of that policy. So it's very clear what we have to do is make sure the application accords with Town 6. We've actually got a policy that refers in the plan that refers to Town 6. So we have to be careful that I think all of us will have sympathy for the family, but we need those reasons if we're to go against officer recommendation here. We have to have that planning reason why we should permit this. There are lots of businesses in the county which probably have people that run them who would like to have dwellings next to them. They will have expensive equipment housed within that accommodation as well. Not so, but that's why Town 6 is there. It's trying to identify that what is a rural enterprise. I think we're satisfied that it's a rural enterprise, but there has to be this. I'm probably going to hand to Rian in a second, but there's got to be a functional reason why somebody needs to live on the spot. What I've heard, Rian probably explained a bit more, but what I've heard is they might use the building for storage, but the business is not there on the spot. It's out amongst all the forestry. That's the connection between dwelling and land that I'm looking for to establish the functional need. And I haven't heard it here. So whilst I am sympathetic, I can't get past how the functional need has been explained. I just want to, I would like to bring Rian in a second, but Councillor Wilkinson to come back.
Yes, just to challenge you a little bit on Town 6. I mean, there's been lots of debate about Town 6 and how it's interpreted by local authorities, and the fact that Town 6 was designed and developed by an urban legislature who perhaps didn't understand the intricacies of rural living and rural life and rural business. You know, and what I want to understand really is our ability to look at, you know, nuance within that town and what flexibility we have to adapt that to our very rural local authority.
Well, at the moment with our current, so we have to determine applications in line with the adopted development plan. So I haven't got an alternative policy that I could give you. I think there are areas that we can look at going forward, but that's a future development plan. So how do we begin to support local needs, housing needs, local families better? So I do sympathise with those arguments, but we've got Town 6. It won't have just been prepared in isolation. It would have been consulted on at the time. So there would have been input and feedback from the rural community, which is served by it, but it's the one that exists at the moment. So, yeah. Chair, if I may, I just want to bring Rian.
Yep,
ready to come in on the functional need. Yeah.
Yeah, good to hear that.
Yeah, so with functional need, as I mentioned earlier, it's got to relate to emergency situations outside of your normal working hours where it needs immediate attention, and that without that immediate attention, the business would be threatened. The practice guidance that has been published alongside Town 6 outlines the tests in a lot more detail. It is very, very clear that security, so like the value of the machinery that they store there and the possibility of damage to that or theft of that is not a reason in which you can apply a functional need. That functional need has to relate to circumstances that could not be overcome through other practical means. There have been many previous applications that have even gone to appeal, where inspectors have ruled that you cannot apply security as a functional need because it can be overcome through other measures such as CCTV or, you know, various deterrent measures. In this specific application. There has been no examples of those scenarios that could occur where without that immediate attention, this business would be threatened. As I said earlier, they have referred within their appraisal to an appendix. That appendix has not been submitted. That is also the case with the previous application, and it was raised as part of the previous application that there was that missing information and it was not forthcoming. It's also worth noting that the functional need is not the only test within TAN 6. There are other tests as well. So you've also got the time test, the financial test, and the other dwelling test. With the time test, you would be expecting calculations as to how it has been evidenced that a full-time worker is required on site outside of those normal working hours to address those emergency situations. Again, the appraisal that's been submitted assures that there is a need, but there's no actual information that has been submitted to enable us to assess that. The financial test, we have received accounts from the business. These acknowledge it's within the document that's been circulated to this morning. They are, you know, sort of made for tax purposes. We do appreciate that. They're not for planning purposes, you know, they're not to be able to assess a rural enterprise. However, we do need to see those accounts, and they, you know, if the accounts are a little bit perhaps misleading for planning purposes, further information can be submitted to explain them. In this case, that information has not been submitted. There's no wages that are shown in those accounts, which is where the concerns have been raised. So the business currently employs 4 people, 2 of them being full-time and 2 of them being part-time. As noted within my report, we are satisfied that the business could fund those 2 full-time members of staff and would remain viable or profitable at the end of it. However, there's also 2 part-time members of staff. We don't know how many hours a week those members are employed for, whether that's 2 hours a week or 4 days a week. Given that we don't know how much work they do for the business, we can't calculate how much wages they should have received for that work. With that insufficiency there, we can establish with any certainty that at the end of taking those wages out, that business would have been profitable at the end. So that's where it fails also on the financial test. Leading in, there's been some comments earlier about the size of the dwelling. The financial test is used to inform the size of the dwelling. So the practice guidance then says that that business should be able to fund the build, you know, and any costs on that. If we can't be certain that that business is profitable to start with, if they had paid those 4 members of staff, we definitely can't be certain that it would then also be able to go on and be able to support those payments on a dwelling. With the other dwelling test, the applicants do live in Carno currently. They are 2.5 miles away from the site. You know, so they are within the village, and it's been mentioned a lot earlier. You know, they are local to the site. There is also other houses for sale in the village closer than that 2.5 metres. Sorry, miles. There is, you know, as you've already heard, the applicant's parents own the site. They do have a dwelling on the site as well in association with their farm. So there is, you know, that presence on site already. So as concluded within the report, there's not evidence for that functional need with the emergency situations that require a dwelling on site. There's no calculations for the time test that have been submitted. There's insufficient information for the financial test for us to be certain that that business would be profitable. And we are satisfied that based on the current understanding of that business, that their current dwelling in Carno fulfills any requirements of that business. So therefore they would fail that test as well.
Okay, I may come back with some more questions, but I want to allow other members to have their time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson. Councillor Gareth E. Jones, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you. I want to focus on the financial test. So since we've had the additional information this morning, I've actually looked on Companies House for the public records of this company. And if I had a business, if one of my children had a business that was increasing its retained earnings to the extent that this business has over the last 4 years, I'd be more than satisfied that this is a long-term sustainable business. You know, it's got assets of about just over $500,000. It's got retained earnings as of the end of last year, 31st of March, 23 of 232,000. So, you know, I think there is strong evidence that it is a financially sustainable business, but I fully accept that we need to allow officers time to actually evaluate the additional information that's been provided by the agent. And I would actually suggest that we propose that we defer this application at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth E. Jones, for your proposal for deferment.
Just come back, Chair.
Yes.
The way the tests are written in the TAN, functional need is like the sort of main principal test, and it's a gateway. So you don't go beyond that until you've proven that. So,
but I think sorry to interrupt, but I think we have heard that there is a need where you've got fires and what have you that are outside normal working times where you have to respond. Gentleman has to get his equipment, go out to those particular areas. So I think there's a case there, but we obviously haven't had that information submitted to the council. I think what Councillor Gareth E. Jones is suggesting is that we pause, we defer, and we wait for that information to come in to make a determination.
you want to come back there?
Yeah, just to clarify, this is the 4th application, so that has been requested. You know, that has been raised. It's not that this is the first application that we are receiving on this site. You know, this has already been refused twice. The level of information that we have received in respect of the dwelling for this application is identical to that of the previous applications.
Welcome back, Peter.
Yeah, just going to raise another issue that we've got with the application. Again, it's we are applying Welsh Government policy here, so that's who wrote TAN 6. But as I said earlier, our policies and our LDP use TAN 6 because it was so detailed. There was no point rewriting anything different, and we have to align. So that's what we do. One of the other requirements of Welsh Government policy is making sure that rural enterprise dwellings could be used as affordable housing as well. Now, the way that that's done is to control the size of the dwelling. In this instance, it's 150 square meters. When it comes to affordable dwellings, we look at maximum up to 115 square meters. So, if we've got an issue from the dwelling size as well, because if we were to grant permission, we would be expected to put a condition on it as an affordable dwelling, but we're effectively permitting something that's too big to be used as an affordable dwelling at some point in the future. So the scale was the second reason that we'd added in to the report as a refusal reason. Now, we could defer the application, but we'd also probably need amended scale size of dwelling to ensure if it could demonstrate all the tests, that the size of the dwelling then would also be suitable as an affordable dwelling in the future. So it's not just one bit of information. I think we're also talking about amendments that would have to be reconsulted on as well.
Okay, thank you for that advice. Councillor Gareth J. Jones, Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do have an element degree of sympathy with the officer here in trying to come to a decision based on policy. However, it has already been said that we got to be seen as a county, as a planning authority, to be finding solutions, not barriers, into everything that's already been so well said from Councillor Vaughan and all the previous councillors before. We need to be encouraging these people to remain in our county. And yes, the officer may well be correctly adhering to what policy is coming through TAN 6 and through Welsh Government and the LDP, but we've got to be able to be seen to how we can interpret it to encourage these people to remain within our communities. Councillor Gareth Jones previously, I've looked at counties at Company's House, and I really believe that the financial test has been met. In number 4 on the report that we received from the agent this morning, it states clearly that if an annual wage bill of £60,000 was paid and remortgage payments of £7,500 annually were also included, the business would still remain profitable. So I think that has been already made. In relation to the function test, this business is on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for some crucial work to be carried out up and down the country. We've seen a list of the companies that they work for. I see on page 45 now of the report from the officer stating that CCTV equipment is sufficient in relation to security. I really do question that. How many times have we seen lately and heard from the police of the robberies within the rural communities now, when the thieves are blatantly staring at the cameras and waving, and there's nothing that can be done? We've already heard about the vast values of the equipment that this business is talking about. We heard from Ed at the beginning in relation to he can't expand his business because of insurance. Does that not go some way to meet the function test? I'm really torn whether to go with deferring this or to proceed to the vote, because I think politically there is a huge support for this application. And as Councillor Vaughan said at the very beginning, it seems a long time ago now, if we set a precedent like this, it's only for the benefit of our youth within Powys. So there isn't a question there, it's just all those statements. And I'll wait to hear what the other councillors say as to which way I'm going to go in relation to deferment or decision today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor D. Jones, Vice Chair. Thank you. Next of our speakers is Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, please.
Well, thank you. Some very interesting comments there. Well, I know it's not easy for officers in many ways, but the reference has been made to this 150 square meters. Well, the fundamental question is, last 6 months, the planning department approved over 6 rural enterprise dwellings with a floor area of over 150 square meters, where their accounts show less of a net profit than this business. Is that true or not?
I honestly don't know without checking. Yeah.
I suggest it is. So
if the size generally reflects the financial information. So if in those instances the finances were demonstrated and justified, then that is possible. Yeah.
Okay. So the argument against the size, although they are willing to discuss flexibility of size, is blown out of the water, isn't it? Based on previous applications.
Not necessarily. So every application is assessed on its own merit and will have been assessed in relation to the finances of that particular business, of that particular application. As we've already mentioned with this one, we do have concerns with the finances of this application because it hasn't been demonstrated to us that those 4 workers could have received a wage and that business then would still remain profitable and profitable to a level that would sustain a house of this size.
Okay, I would suggest it's highly unlikely that you get 4 workers working for 3 these days, but that's another story. I think the financial test has been met, not just in this date, but what colleagues have said today. And I come back to the functional need in reality. If that is the key starting point of the domino effect, if you like, I would argue such a house is needed on site because it is a 24/7 business. needs emergency access. It's a growing potential business, and I think it just makes practical sense. And the justification they can live 2 or 3 miles away on housing estates. Housing estates, I can tell you, I argued against in last LDP because I think they are not needed locally. This is what is needed, and I'm still to that point, and that is why I still propose that we should support the application.
Diolch, Councillor Owen Vaughan. Councillor Angela Davis, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I think, like my colleagues, I have a lot of sympathy for this family, and I think we're all minded here to try and find a way to see this come to fruition. I feel a bit sorry for the planning officers, though, because I understand that they have to follow legislation, rules and guidelines, and in some degree, it's a bit of a tick box exercise, isn't it, that you've got to meet all those criteria. I think one thing we haven't explored today is the role of the agent, and I'm very mindful they're in the room, so I must choose my words carefully. But if I were myself putting in an application, I would employ an agent, assuming that they're an expert on getting an application through a planning process. I'm quite frustrated reading the pack of information. There's been 4 applications, and yet you still don't feel you have all the information to hand. Now, all of this is in the public domain, so I would have thought, I understood that this authority is working with our agents to ensure their applications are of a better quality. And indeed, we've had them before this committee where the application is so clear, so good, all the information is provided, that the decision has been made for us in the pack. And yet here we are arguing over things that are actually key points. But I'm just curious why the agent doesn't understand that, and why this information therefore hasn't been applied. So I suppose my question is the agent not working with you? Are you not supporting the agent to give the right information? Where's the breakdown here? Because we got a family who I assume are paying an agent an awful lot of money, who must have put an awful lot of time and passion. I'm sure this has been a highly stressful situation. And here we have members really keen to see this go through. What's gone wrong?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there that I think you'll understand I'm not necessarily party to. The 4 applications that we have had in, the current agent has not been the agent for all of them. They were definitely the agent for the last one. They were not for the first one. I'm kind of looking at him, maybe he wasn't for the second. No, no. So, you know, there has been a change of agent through the course of those 4 applications. I do share your disappointment that this information hasn't been submitted though, because it was requested as part of the previous application. The information that we have received as part of this application for the dwelling is identical to that of the previous refused application.
So to clarify, the information that you are stating today you haven't received has been asked for.
The concerns with this application are the same concerns as was with the previous application. That is with the minor exception that the previous application was made in outline. So whilst concerns were raised in relation to the size and scale, because that was a reserved matter, it wasn't refused on that basis. Whereas now, because the application is before us in full, we do have that, and we are refusing it on that as well at this point. But the concerns are the same as the previous one.
So not my place to say, but really I think the agent needs to sort of perhaps do a little bit more homework and perhaps come and work a bit more closely with you so that they can get a better quality application in. I have got a second question, Chair, if I might.
Absolutely.
The issue of the change of use for the shed, I really don't understand that. I understood that agriculture and forestry are within the same employment classification, so why would they even need a change of use?
She's asking me to come in. For our understanding, I think the description is this is very much a commercial element they're bringing into the agricultural, so that's why there's been a change of use as part of this application. So the commercial running of a business from that agricultural unit would not be permitted under an agricultural use class. That makes sense.
So to come back on that, had they got the change of use through planning prior to putting this application, would it have made this more favourable?
We're not objecting to the use of that building. None of our reasons for refusal relate to that change of use. But no, we would be in the same circumstance in that, you know, it's not been established as part of this application or the previous ones that there is a functional need for a dwelling on site to relate to it.
Can I come back again, Chair? I'm going through a list here. So in terms of, we've talked about the functional need and you don't feel you've had the financial data, but members here feel very strongly that they have seen that. The other one was the time test. And again, you don't feel that you've had the evidence that proves the time test, but members here feel that here it says in the report that they are required 24/7 for the emergency and repair works they do with NRW. The other one was the size of the house. Had they put an application for a smaller property, would you be more minded to approve?
If the dwelling was smaller, it would remove one of the reasons for refusal potentially, but there is still that overriding problem or concern with the principle of development here.
Okay, this is frustrating. This is very frustrating, very frustrating. What am I thinking? Thank you very much. I'll think about this some more.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Angela. For me, it looks like we're almost there with this application, but there's just, as we're all circling around, there's just this bit of information that's needed. And, you know, there is a proposal for a deferment, but we'll go on. Councillor Gareth Pugh, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, but we have to take the second one first. Thank you very much, Councillor Gareth Pugh, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I can see how the officer probably quite rightly reached her decision of refusal. But then again, when you look at this application, it's one of those, it's like appetite for or appetite against. You can find reasons to refuse this, but equally, you can find reasons to support this. And as we've heard, it's a bit of an unbalanced decision that we're here to make today. And as a committee, that is our job. I think Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, has summed this application up very well in the opening speech that he made. And hearing and seeing what I've seen today, I think it would be very negative if we can't support this application. And if it goes against the Welsh government policy, I suggest perhaps the policy needs rewriting. I'm all for supporting this young family to stay in our locality and encourage them and wish them all the best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gareth Pugh. So just to recap, we have, as Councillor Elwyn Vaughan points out, a proposal and a seconder to go against the officer's recommendation and approve the application. We also only have a proposal to go for deferment. We don't have a seconder on that at the moment. If we were to have a seconder, I would have to take that first. And then if that fell, we'd come back to the original motion. So do I have a seconder? Councillor Gareth Pugh, is that a legacy hand? Yes, I believe.
Chair, I need to come in as well.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so if members are minded to approve it, I think what we need is to tease out and explain the reasons why you think it should be approved. As I've said, our job, and it is all of our, well, it's your job as a committee. It's not my job today to approve anything or refuse anything or decide. It's your job today to do that. But you've got to decide in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So I need to hear the reasoning, or as a committee, you need to find that reasoning.
Absolutely.
So we can minute it if you go down that route. Okay.
So we'll go back to Councillor Elwyn Vaughan as the proposer to refuse the officer's recommendation of refusal and to approve the application. We hear your wording. Please,
right, so generous. The key thing to me is the fact I think it does need 24/7 contracts they have with different companies and timber companies, etc. And to do that effectively, you need to be on site. Doesn't matter where you live, really, but you need to be on site practically to run that business day to day. And I would say that is the business base. Although they work in different forestry locations and things, at the end of the day, it's like any business. Somebody could be a mechanic in a garage. That's the base, although they might be mending cars or whatever on different sites on different homes and things. So I think that's the crux of it, and that's what differentiates it from perhaps other type businesses which are not 24/7 coverage and don't get emergency call-outs and things. I don't know. That's my impression.
Okay, so that gets you through the gate there, Peter. You happy with the start of that?
Yeah.
Because they could probably lose the contract, I would say.
That's my, I think my opinion is.
Yeah. I would be happier, committee. We have a proposal to go for deferment. The application is almost there. We're just lacking that detail that hasn't come through. Officers are struggling over here with what you've said, Councillor Elwyn Vaughan.
We'll do a double act.
We'll do a double act. I think we're probably some of our concerns are coming from is obviously we've got applicants here who live, I think, is it 2.5 miles? So is that 10 minutes travel? Now, I suppose my concern is that this could set a precedent that if we're saying 10 minutes travel would affect the viability of someone's business. I can't see where that justification is in that time taken. Usually, I think when we have perhaps similar applications, because that's how I'm going to compare it in my head, is we have a lot bigger distance of travel. And we've already heard from the officer here today that there's actually existing dwellings for sale closer than when they're currently living. And we haven't got that information as to why that won't then meet that need. So that's my own concern, is that we have here got other dwellings in that rural setting which are trying to be sold, but yet we're supporting new dwellings being built when that could already meet that functional need. So I think that's
my response to that. Currently, it's a rented accommodation, and we all know how difficult rented accommodation is in not just in rural communities, but in all our communities at present. And the fact of the matter is there's no guarantees with rented accommodation. So in 6 months' time, that may come to an end, and they may have to move to Newtown or wherever to get rented accommodation. In terms of the buying properties, yes, there may well be other properties, but the prices of them are ridiculous. Some of them 400,000, 450,000. I can show you some of the houses I'm familiar with. And those, the price range is not practical, I would suggest.
I think we are just giving out information.
The property in this instance that is available for purchase is 1.2 miles away from the site and is 245,000.
But are we seeing now that we're going to force people to where they actually can live?
It's not a case of forcing people, but the TAM 6 is not in place to provide that preference to people. You know, policy on a whole is restrictive for housing developments in the open countryside, and that is, you know, embedded within national policy as well as Powys local development plan policy. You know, it's not there. That's why there's the tests that they have to meet. You know, you do have to provide that justification to make a robust case for why there needs to be a house there. And one of the tests involved in that is the other dwelling test, you know, that is contained within the planning policy to make sure that there's that need, if one is identified, cannot be, you know, fulfilled by living in a different property that already exists and is built rather than building one.
I accept all that, but I come back to the point, we need 24/7 coverage potential of this site.
I do agree. There are 24/7 contracts in place, and that was submitted to us as part of the application up front, so we are aware of that. where we don't consider that that justifies a functional need for a dwelling on site is that the 10 minutes or so, you know, to get in the car, drive there and be on site is negligible then with the ongoing travel distance that they have to actually get to that site where that emergency is. That emergency is not at this site. So there could be, you know, 3/4 of an hour, you know, drive on from that site, in which case that 10 minutes initially, you know, doesn't constitute then that functional need.
I rest my case. I think we'll just have to go to vote, Chair, and
Okay.
agree to disagree, I think.
Okay. Councillor Angela Davis, please.
Yeah, I really dislike that sort of explanation of the housing. So they're renting a very small house in the local village at the moment that happens to be 10 minutes ago. So are we saying to a family, before you put your planning application in, go and rent a property an hour away from your site, because that might give you a bit more chance. You're saying there's a local property, but 240,000. But we all know it's not going to cost 240,000 to build a property on a site that you own or is within your family ownership. So I don't see the analogy works in this case at all. We're discussing whether this family need to be on site, irrelevant of how far it is to travel from where they may or may not currently live. That just happens to be where they've got a rented property. And we are saying that they have proven through that requirement to get off and go to sites in an emergency, we feel that they have met that 24/7 need and that security issue. So I just think that the fact that they rent a little house that currently happens to be, but is clearly not suitable for their needs within 10 minutes is irrelevant in this case.
Yeah, Peter.
Rural enterprise dwellings are really complicated. I think we'll all agree that. They are complicated. There are other policy requirements in Town 6 for different types of dwelling. So the things, if there's already a dwelling on site, which I think there might be nearby, this might be considered a second dwelling. So this is taking me to thinking it might be more sensible to defer it and have further discussion. I think my other concern, just sat here thinking about it, that the enterprise or the building that's used for storing the equipment, we could grant permission for both. The ownership is separate. I'm unsure how we're tying the dwelling to the building and the enterprise as well. It's almost, if we give permission, we could be granting a permission that's that's very open. I just think there's some more discussions needed here around this and how we control that.
Indeed. Councillor Deb Edwards, please.
Yeah, I just, after listening to everything, I'd just like to second Gareth Jones's proposal of defer, if that's all right, Chair.
That's fine. I will go back to Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson because he's moved 4 down on my screen. So
Thank you, Chair. I thought I'd upset you then.
No, not at all. Sorry, Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson.
Thank you. Yeah, I've listened intently to the debate. I'm concerned that as an authority, we look more like one that's putting forward problems rather than solutions here. I've listened to proposer Councillor Elwyn Vaughan's proposal and concur with that. In addition, I'm very persuaded by the need for the applicants to be on site from the point of view of security and response. I would like to see this go to a vote.
Okay. Councillor Peter James, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jeff Morgan will be our last speaker and I will take it to the vote. Okay,
I'm just mindful of paragraph 4.2 on rural enterprise dwellings and the look on electronic surveillance. I mean, this could be a total different thing on the insurance companies on being on site and also surveillance. And is there a better chance of a cheaper insurance for that business, or are we going to put more pressure on a local business having more costs put on it? But I mean, insurance companies find any loophole to try and put extra charges on businesses of today, I think.
I don't know, Councillor Peter. I suppose not. That's not really a planning factor to do with the application itself, but I will put it across to Ian if you want to answer that.
Yeah, insurance costs as part of a business wouldn't be a planning consideration that would overrule any material planning policy.
Okay, I just was looking at it as a different point of view. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peter. Councillor Jeff Morgan, please.
It's quite, I'm sat here listening to this and it's quite obvious to me is the officer's 100% right. And it's the policy that's 100% wrong. 30 years ago, I bought 28 acres of land tried to build a house, couldn't do it. I've said this before in planning, it spoilt my life for sure, without doubt. And I don't want to see this happening to these people again. And I think it's time somebody put a motion forward at full council to write to the Welsh Government to review their planning, TAN 6 or whatever. And I'm toying between defer or for, and I'm gonna vote for, I think, because if we don't, it's up to us to step up. Otherwise, nothing will get changed, will it? It'll just carry on as we are. We need to keep these youngsters here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jeff. Morgan, we have had a proposal to defer and a seconder, and that is the second proposal coming forward, so I have to take that first. If that falls, we go back to the original motion of Councillor Elwins-Vaughan of proposal going against the officer's recommendation. So, Carol, could we have the proposal for deferment up first to vote on that? And like I say, if that falls, we go to Councillor Elwin-Vaughan's. And just to be clear, Councillor Gareth E. Jones, we're deferring to gain additional information. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. There we go, members. It's in the chat box to vote on, and you're voting on whether to defer.
Chair, 14 members able to vote. 5 have voted for deferment. 9 have voted against deferment.
So that falls, and we go back to Councillor Elwins-Vaughan for proposal to go against officer's recommendation, therefore approve the application before us. So if we could have that put in the voting chat there, please, Carol, for our voting slip again. There it is, members. Second one down. So you're voting to approve, contrary to officer's recommendation. So you're looking to go against officer's recommendation, but you're approving. So, or you're voting against that. It's up to you. just to be clear. Clear as mud.
And I would also add, if members did decide that, they'd also be delegating approval of conditions down to us,
Indeed.
myself as professional lead.
You happy with that, councillor Ellenwood? And the second, councillor Hyland-Hume, are you happy with that?
Yes, Chair.
Right, good.
Sorry, Chair, can I just check that I have voted? So the statement said to go against officers' recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go with the officer, you vote against that. But
Yes.
If you want to go against the officers, you go with that.
Yes.
Clear as mud. Thank you very much.
Right, Chair, again, 14 members eligible to vote. 13 have voted for
Yeah,
going against officer's recommendation.
there we go.
1 has voted against going against officer's recommendation. And no abstentions.
No abstentions. So the planning permission is approved. So gone against officer's recommendation. Okay, is it your wish we stop for a 5-minute comfort break? I can see your hand raised, councillor Adrian Jones.
Conditions that Peter just mentioned, do we provide any or not?
It will need, all permissions need planning permission, planning conditions, sorry, yeah. So we will have to prepare those as we would on the basis of your decision as a committee this morning. Yeah. Oh.
That you want to suggest.
Yeah. It's normally just delegated.
It's normally delegated to myself.
Or who actually owns off there, could that be clarified?
There's nothing could be done about ownership. Well, not now that consent's been granted, so no, we couldn't do that.
Okay, is it your wish that we stop for a 5-minute comfort break, or do you want to proceed? You've got to disappear. Okay. I think we proceed, or 5 minutes? 5 minutes, is it, councillor Ellenwood? Yes, okay. Thank you, members. Welcome back. We are now dealing with the final application of the day. Before we do so, we'll go for a roll call over to Carol for that roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair. So councillor Carl Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Gareth D. Jones. Councillor Angela Davis. Councillor Deb Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Hyland-Hume.
Present.
Councillor Peter James.
Present.
Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Gareth E. Jones has left. Councillor Karina Kenyon-Wade. Councillor Jeff Morgan.
Present.
Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Present.
Councillor Edwin Roderick. Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. And Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Carol. On to our final application of the day, which is 24/0168/TRE. Works to trees, the felling of 4 pine trees at 7 Scott Pine Trees, River Wye Activity Centre, Gelsbury House, Gelsbury on Wye. Taking us through this application is Richard Edwards. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, all. The application before you is a notification for works of trees in the conservation area. It has been called in by the local member, hence why it's before you today. As mentioned, the application is located within the Community Council of Glaisbury and also within the large village of Glaisbury. The slide on the screen here, the red line denotes the area of the 11 trees which are to be felled, which consist of 4 Corsican pines and 7 Scots pines. And here is a plan. Hopefully you can see that on your laptops.
Yes.
On the right boundary, the top 4 trees are Corsican pines, and then the 7 Scot pines are below along the boundary. The slide here shows the extent of Glaisbury Conservation Area, which is a requirement for why the trees need to come in before through a notification in respect of works to those trees. The black dotted line running along the eastern boundary is a right of way, and the trees are located in close proximity to this right of way. So as mentioned, a notification has been submitted to the authority to fell 11 trees. It's responsibility of the authority to either allow the 6-week determination period to expire, or inform the applicant that works can go ahead, or make a tree preservation order. The proposed works are to fell 11 trees. It's noted that the location of the trees are in close proximity to the adjacent right of way and the flood wall. The trees in question, so this is a picture of the 7 Scots pines, and these are the 4 Corsican pines. They are the very tall trees located adjacent to the right of way and the flood wall, and they are deemed to pose a risk to walkers, users of the adjacent right of way. It is noted that the notification has been submitted by a tree report. It has classified the trees to be in a fair to good condition. However, officers do consider that given their proximity to the right of way and the flood wall, they do pose a risk to users of that right of way. Considering whether the trees of this notification should be subject to a tree preservation order, officers have conducted a site visit to the site. It is noted that the trees are visible within the wider extent. So this photo here is from Glaisbury Bridge, looking southwest towards the activity centre in which they are located. So the tallest trees that you can see within the photo are the Corsican pines, which are subject to it, and the 7 Scot pines are interspersed, I suppose, between other existing trees within this viewpoint. Here you can see the trees again, the photo on the left, looking towards from the southwest angle along the right of way. You can see the trees leaning towards that right of way and close proximity to the wall. The next photo shows the trees looking away, towards the bridge on the left-hand side. It is noted that the trees are visible within a wider extent. However, that is itself not a reason to award a TPO on them. It is noted there are existing trees within the vicinity and adjacent which will be retained, and it's considered that the loss of these 7 trees would not cause an adverse visual harm to the character and that of the conservation area. The individual trees themselves, as again mentioned, they are very close to a right of way. They are leaning, and it's not considered the loss of the 11 trees proposed would have a detrimental impact upon the right of way. Evidence has been provided of a tree last year, which is deemed to be fair and good within the information provided of the tree survey. As you can see, a tree which is deemed to be fair and good collapsed, fell, and it has gone across the right of way. As you can appreciate, given that tree was a similar height of the trees that are proposed, there is a risk to walkers, users of the adjacent right of way. Given this element and the risk associated, it is proposed officers recommend that the works to the trees should be allowed to go ahead. I'll pass you back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Richard. Over to members for discussion. First to indicate they'd like to speak on this application is Councillor Elwyn Vaughan, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Just a simple question, pleased to know. I appreciate they're very tall and trees, but highly unusual people want to cut trees down these days. Is there any proposal, and I haven't seen anything in the paperwork, to replant suitable trees there? Because I think that would perhaps alleviate concerns some may have with loss of trees, etc.
Unfortunately, it's not actually a requirement of this process through the notification. However, I would encourage applicants to plant trees. I can recommend that as part of it, but I can't make them do it. But I can highlight a recommendation that they should plant trees. As you can appreciate, like the location of the trees grow over time. They may be suitable when they're there, but given proximity to certain instances, so yeah, I could definitely make a recommendation.
Well, I personally, I would think that'd be good practice and in keeping with what the authority is saying these days, I think.
Yeah, TPO applications, if they were to fell a TPO, like we do ask that they replace a tree in its place. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not actually a requirement I can mandate as part of this, but I can definitely recommend. Yeah.
Diolch. Councillor Edwin Roderick, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Yes, I fully agree with the point put across by Councillor Vaughan at the moment I think it would be an ideal opportunity should we go ahead with taking these trees down to replant with a variety of native broadleaf trees and perhaps a little further away from the wall than these are. Because I think one thing we have to bear in mind here, these trees would be shallow rooted and prone to wind blow, which we can see, which has already happened. So therefore, and that sort of timber is generally rather brittle anyhow. And I'm fully aware of the circumstances surrounding the TPOs of trees, which we have many within the Banau Brycheiniog. And of course, looking at the pictures of these, and incidentally, several months ago, I passed in this area and I could see many of these trees and in fact, leaning over the wall. And I think because they are shallow rooted as well, should they go over, I think they could end up taking a piece of the wall with them as well. So in this instance, Chair, I would support the officer's recommendation and allow these to be felled, and perhaps recommend that it is replanted with native broadleaf variety trees. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Edwin. Councillor Edwin, are we okay to put that forward as a recommendation, native broadleaf trees? If the committee was minded to.
Yeah, I can include as informative as part of the notification.
Excellent, great. Councillor Adrian Jones, please.
So, thank you, Chair. I'm probably going to repeat what's just been said before. So I haven't got anything to say really. The trees are replaced. I'm happy, but I was going to say if you put a TPO on, they'd have to be replaced. So perhaps we should go down that route. But if you can put a recommendation that they're replaced, I'm happy enough either way. So that's my comment really.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Angela Davis, please.
I hate to see a tree being felled, but you can see here on this photo, even though it says fair to good condition, there's no guarantee that the tree won't fall. And obviously, I think everything's been said. But have we got another photo of, this is the 4 trees. They are very close to the wall and they do look very tall compared to the surroundings. What about the 7 or 9 trees? Have you got a picture of that?
These are 7.
Right. So on what basis are they being felled? They're not so tall. They don't appear to be leaning. They look to be in full health. They're full bloom there.
Again, it's the proximity of those trees adjacent to the right of way and the flood
But
wall.
those trees have clearly been adjacent to that right of way and the wall for however many years it's taken for them to grow that big. I wonder, can't we not split the application, the 4 very tall trees that do look risk? And has there been any proposal to do any tree surgery works to limit their height, trim them down, take any loose branches?
So the notification does relate to the felling of the trees. Officers have queried the extent of the works required, and it has been said back that the proposal is to fell the trees. So that's what I'm considering here. Like based on the evidence that has been submitted, like the trees have been shown to pose a risk to the adjacent right-of-way flood wall. There's a clear potential danger associated with proximity of the tall trees adjacent to this right-of-way as evident in this photo. And also consider that the harm, potential risk associated would outweigh the merits of a creation of a TPO in this instance, given that the trees are located in an area with other trees. It's not as if they're 11 isolated trees with no trees around them. They do form part of a canopy wooded area in that area. So given like the viewpoints given, it's not considered that those trees being felled would harm the conservation area and the wider visual impact of that area either.
Yeah, no, I don't really buy it. I can see the four trees, and there is a risk if they fall, and one has fallen, the other is leaning. I can see there is a risk that demonstrates that there's a potential risk to the wall, to pedestrians. But of the other row of trees, there's nothing that demonstrates any risk from those trees, to my mind. The other issue I've got is because they're there along the floodplain, if we take all those trees out, we're at further risk of flooding. So I would support the suggestion that if these do come down, that other trees should be put in that area somewhere. Because
yeah, I can definitely recommend that, as I said, I can't enforce that they plant them because it's not a requirement of the notification process. Definitely recommend that they plant trees in a more suitable location, maybe away from the flood wall, so when they grow. But this notification is to consider whether those trees would warrant to be made into TPOs. I appreciate the other concerns, but it's the visual amenity impact of them and whether those trees are deemed to be suitable to award a TPO on them. Given the assessment providing the information and site visits, officers don't consider these trees in this instance would require a TPO to be placed on them. However, I am happy to recommend that the applicant landowner does plant trees. I can make that recommendation on this matter.
so to clarify, if we put a TPO on them today, they could still apply to cut them down, but they would then have to replace. Could having the TPO on them today mean that they could apply separately so that we could approve the cutting down of the 4 tall trees and keep the others?
Well, the notification is for the 11 trees. So it needs to be determined in accordance with that. So if you're reminded to refuse the application, we would have to create a TPO on them then. The TPO doesn't necessarily stop any works happening to those trees. There is legislation out there which does allow to undertake works to trees that are TPOs that pose a imminent risk. So if there was a storm and they're basically about to fall over, cause serious harm, they can fell them. They need to notify the authority at the earliest opportunity of when that's done, or like there's no process of like 5 days before that. Given the scale and the nature of the trees, their visual impact in the wider area, their individual impact, the recommendation is one to allow the trees to be felled and not to award a TPO in this instance. I have awarded TPOs on other trees, just as a matter of fact, so it is something that we do. Those trees I did previously, they were large veteran oaks. They were like very established trees, but in this instance, I don't consider them to be appropriate to be TPO'd.
Okay. Councillor Jeff Morgan, please.
I'd just like to say that I'm happy to go along with the officer's proposal. Propose we go along with it. Those ones there, I think there's a picnic table in the foreground. They look pretty dangerous to me. And as for the others, they probably have they're all, like Edwin said, they're all shallow rooted.
Yeah.
And can we like strongly recommend, if we can't make them do it, can we strongly recommend that they plant some oak trees there back? Or whatever, but those ones by that table definitely need to come down by the committee sooner rather than later. So I propose as we go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jeff. You'll be seconding the officer's recommendation because Councillor Edwin Roderick has already proposed. Are you happy to second? Councillor Jeff, are you happy to second that proposal?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Thank you. Councillor Adrian Jones, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Can I just ask, as far as timing, are trees like hedges, you're going to cut them down in a certain period? So it'd be September now, at the earliest, sort of thing? Thank you.
There is an informative included on the notification, which will require consideration of protected and priority species before any of those felling works take place. And yeah, potentially license from NRW in respect of protected trees and or felling of trees in a. Yeah, I think the NRW deal with like the felling of trees and the amount you can do per quarter.
So, answer my question, it means it's the same as taking a hedge out. Bird's nesting time, you can't drop these trees until September. That's okay. Thank you. Is that right?
Yeah, biodiversity like is critical with every application really, and that's why an informative would be placed on to ensure no harm, detriment to protected or priority species happens as part of this.
Okay. It has been proposed and duly seconded to go along with the officer's recommendation, which is one of work allowed to go ahead of felling these trees. Those members wishing to go along with that recommendation, please indicate in the chat. That will, I'll click on the hyperlink that will appear in the chat momentarily. Thank you. There we go, members. With the addition of the recommendation from the proposer, Councillor Edward Roderick, that broadleaf trees native to the lands are planted in replacement away from the wall. Yes.
Right, Chair, 13 members eligible to vote, 13 voted for the work to go ahead, none against and no abstentions.
That's great. That meets with officer's recommendation. Thank you, Carol. On to the delegated list. There was an observation I had on the first page of the pack. There seems to be an anomaly there. Oh, that is.
Neither do I. We've got some sort of error in the report.
So on the first page, members of the delegated list are spotted just below Abercombe community.
Yeah.
There seems to be a bit gobbledygook there.
I think there's a fault in the way the report's run.
Any other observations? Are you happy to receive them? We have a proposer and seconder, please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. On to appeals decisions. Any observations or you want clarity on anything there? No, are you happy to receive? Thank you very much, Councillor Owen. Thank you very much, Councillor Edwin Roderick. And then on to the final agenda item, which is minutes from the previous taxi license meeting, which was chaired by my vice chair. Could I have two other councillors that sat in on that propose that they were accurate record, please? I'm just scrambling to find the paperwork on that myself. So they were Councillor
Councillor Edwin and Councillor Angela.
Davis and Councillor Roderick. Edwin Roderick, are you happy that they were accurate record? Councillor Adrian. Angela Davis, sorry, Angela Davis.
Yeah, and Councillor Peter was also present.
Thank you. And Councillor Peter James, you were also present. Everyone happy that they were accurate record of what transpired? Excellent. Thank you very much. That concludes the planning meeting for today. I'd like to thank officers that presented today, you members at home and in the chamber, members of the public watching, our speakers who spoke as well, and members of the press. Carol, could we have the date of the next meeting, please?
Yes, Chair, the next meeting's on the 4th of April.
Okay. Gemma, could we, in the next meeting, bring along the 2 enforcement officers? Excellent. That will be able to meet the enforcement officers and get familiar with them, because I think this committee will be the councillors that would probably be doing most of the enforcement or know who to contact. So thank you very much. I therefore, Councillor Howland-Hume, please.
You asked what I wanted to ask, so that's fantastic. And with regards to the enforcement officers, you know, what their caseload is going to be like going forward, what have they done so far, what successes have they done? So yeah, a general update and report from the 2 enforcement officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Peter, you'll be bringing your performance data, I imagine, in the next meeting.
Yes.
Excellent. Councillor Gareth Pugh, please.
Thanks, Chair. Could I just give my apologies for the next meeting, the 4th of April? I won't be about.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Gareth Pugh. Okay, I close the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.